order to curb any unwanted behavior, it is very helpful to understand what are the driving forces behind behavior of any kind whatsoever. That is the primary driving force behind all our behaviors, are our vasanas, our Vishaya vasanas. It is under the sway of our Vishaya vasanas that we behave in this way or that way. There is another factor, namely prarabdha. As Bhagavan implies in the note he wrote for his mother, God will make our mind, speech and body act in whatever way is necessary in order for our prarabdha to unfold. That's why he begins that note by saying, Abaraba prarabdha prakaram adakanavan angangirandu ātma-vicāra. That means Abaraba prarabdha prakaram means according to or in accordance with the prarabdha of each person. Adakanava means he who is for that. That refers to God or Guru. Angangirandu means being there. That means being in each place, implying being in the heart of each one of us. ātma-vicāra. ātma-vicāra literally means will cause to dance. In other words, will make us act. So we will be made to do whatever actions are necessary in order for our prarabdha to unfold. However, that is already preordained. It is God who is making us act in that way, so that is out of our hands. We need not be concerned about that. The reason Bhagavan taught us this is that to make us understand that whatever we try and do or avoid doing, what is to be experienced is to be experienced. That is, we can't avoid experiencing whatever is we are destined to experience, and we will be made to act in accordance with that. However, the vast majority of our actions are driven by our vasanas. Even those actions that we are made to do by God are, in most cases, our vasanas also playing a part, because, for example, if it is your destiny to say, become a doctor, for example. In order to become a doctor, you have to study hard, you have to pass exams and so on. So you will be made to do all those actions in order to become a doctor. But most people who become doctors also want to become doctors. So not only are those actions being driven by God, those necessary actions being driven by God, they're also being driven by our vasanas. So whether a particular action is being driven by God or not, that need not concern us. What we need to be concerned about is our vasanas. So long as we allow ourselves to be swayed by our vasanas, we will inevitably be doing actions under their sway. So it's the vasanas we have to be concerned about. Or rather, allowing ourselves to be swayed by the vasanas, because vasanas are inclinations. That is, Bhagavan generally referred to the vast majority of our vasanas are what he called Vishaya vasanas. Vishaya means objects or phenomena. In other words, anything other than ourselves. So the inclination to seek happiness in anything other than ourselves is a Vishaya vasana. And it's under the sway of our Vishaya vasanas that we act by mind, speech and body. The only other type of vasana is the Sat vasana. That's the inclination just to be as we actually are, the inclination to seek happiness in our own being. It's under the sway of that vasana, but we turn our attention within to try to find out who am I. But the vast majority of our vasanas are Vishaya vasanas. They are drawing our attention outwards. But they are just inclinations. We are not bound by our inclinations. But we have the freedom either to allow ourselves to be swayed by any particular inclination or not to allow ourselves to be swayed by any inclination. When we allow ourselves to be swayed by the Sat vasana, we are thereby not allowing ourselves to be swayed by other vasanas, or to the extent we are being swayed by satvasana, in other words, but to the extent to which we are being self-attentive, we are not thereby not being swayed by other vasanas. So the most effective way to weaken all Vishaya vasanas is to cling to self-attentiveness. Because when we allow us, vasanas have no strength of their own. They gain their strength by our allowing ourselves to be swayed by them. The more we allow ourselves to be swayed by any particular Vishaya vasana, the stronger it becomes. The more we avoid being swayed by any particular Vishaya vasana, the weaker it becomes. So the more we cling to self-attentiveness, the more we are thereby strengthening the sattvasana and weakening all the Vishaya vasanas. But as far as the Vishaya vasanas are concerned, we have countless Vishaya vasanas which are often pulling us in opposite directions. For example, the problem that you have talked about, this inclination to overeat. You have an inclination to overeat, but you also have an inclination. You also know that overeating is not good for you. It's not good for the health, and it's not good for your spiritual practice also. So moderation is always good. But so you had some inclination because you want to follow Bhagavan's path, and maybe because you want to take care of your health. You had some inclination to eat in moderation, but you also have an inclination to overeat. Those two inclinations are pulling you in opposite directions. So, but you are free to allow yourself to be swayed by this inclination or that inclination. Both of them are Vishaya vasanas. That is, attending to anything other than ourselves, that is, the liking to attend to anything other than ourselves is a Vishaya vasana. So even the liking to eat in moderation is a Vishaya vasana, but it's a less harmful Vishaya vasana than the Vishaya vasana that prompts you your inclination to overeat. I mean, that's obviously not good for your health, and it's not good either for the body or for the mind. And so it's not good for the spiritual practice. If we overeat, overeating leads to tamas, and tamas is not a favorable condition for turning our mind within. So that's why Bhagavan said, by mitta sattvika ahara niyama, that is by the constraint of eating only sattvic food in moderate quantities, the sattvic quality of the mind increases, and that helps in the practice of self-investigation. So we are always free to be swayed by this vasana or that vasana. That is, if two vasanas are pulling us in opposite directions, it's up to us which one we allow ourselves to be swayed by. But if one of those vasanas is much stronger than the other one, we will be inclined to follow that one. But we are not bound to. So we can avoid being swayed by our Vishaya vasanas if we want to. But trouble is, Vishaya vasanas are our wants. They're the seeds that give rise to our wants. So if your inclination to overeat is stronger than your inclination to eat in moderation, it's going to be an uphill, it's going to be a struggle, inevitably. But the only way you can overcome the inclination to overeat is by not allowing yourself to be swayed by it. The more you allow yourself to be swayed by it, the stronger it becomes, and the more difficult it becomes for you to avoid being swayed by it. That is one side of it. The other side is the Vishaya vasana, the inclinations, they are the seeds that give rise to likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on, hopes and fears and all these things. And these in turn give rise to actions. So if we allow a vasana to sprout in the form of a liking, that liking, if we don't curb that liking, it will give rise to, it'll develop further into a desire. And if we don't curb that desire, it will lead to action. We will actually indulge in overeating. So the further down the line we try to control, the more difficult it is. For example, if you like to overeat, if you often thinking, oh yes, it would be nice to eat this or to eat that, and so on and so forth, you are feeding that liking, so that what starts off as a liking grows into a desire, and that desire grows stronger and stronger. The stronger the desire becomes, the more difficult it is to control the behavior. And then once the food is actually there in front of you, then it's very difficult to control. So we can control, we can curb our behavior, control our behavior most effectively by cutting the problem, by nipping it in the bud, by dealing with the problem at the very moment it starts. So as soon as the inclination rises in you to eat, at that point you should curb it before allowing it to develop into a liking, a desire, and to think about it, and then the temptation grows stronger and stronger, and finally you're not able to resist. If you can curb it at the point of that it rises, as soon as the inclination rises, if you divert your attention away to something else, you will avoid being carried away by that inclination. Thereby you'll be gradually weakening the inclination. Of course, the most effective way to avoid being swayed by any Vishaya Vasana of any kind whatsoever is to cling to self-attentiveness. The more we cling to self-attentiveness, the more, as I say, the more our Sat Vasana is strengthened, and all our Vishaya Vasanas are weakened. However, if we find that a certain vasana is so strong, it keeps on carrying, we keep on allowing ourselves to be carried away by it, we may find it very difficult to cling to self-attentiveness. So there are other strategies we can use. That is, as I say, the most effective way to curb our behavior, to avoid being swayed by any Vishaya Vasana, is to cling to self-attentiveness. If we don't have sufficient liking to cling to self-attentiveness, but we easily get carried away, we can divert our attention in other ways. You touch upon this a little in your email. Think about Bhagavan's teachings. If, for example, if you try to think about why he said we shouldn't overeat, that may prompt more your mind to be more dwelling on overeating. Just think of something quite different. Think of what he taught us, for example, about what we actually are. We are not this body. This body has. We are something separate from this body because we exist even in the absence of this body. So thinking about the deeper aspects of his teachings, thinking about the unreality of all that we are experiencing. Everything that we experience is just a dream. It's a creation of our own mind. Nothing is real. We can't find any happiness in the things of the world. But whatever happiness we seem to derive from the things of the world, it's actually coming only from within, because happiness lies only within. It doesn't lie outside. So by thinking about his teachings, even by praying to him, if you feel inclined to do so, if you find that any particular vasana is too strong for you, then sometimes we feel helpless. So we pray to him. We ask him, because the very fact that we have any inclination to follow this path at all is entirely due to his grace. The nature of ego is to be always clinging to things other than itself. So to gain the inclination to even try to begin clinging to ourselves, being self-attentive, it's only by grace that this liking to follow this path has come to us. So we are wholly dependent on grace. So if all else fails, just pray for his grace. Pray to him, Bhagavan, I've got this problem. I'm not able to. I feel I'm too weak. Please support me. Please give me the strength to hold on to I am, or to think about your teachings. Anything rather than allowing myself to be carried away by this very strong vasana. The more we divert our mind away from, if we find any vasana is particularly harmful, particularly strong, we want to weaken it. As I say, the best way to do so is to cling to self-attentiveness. But because of our lack of love for being self-attentive, much of the time we are not being as self-attentive, we're attending to other things. So attend to those things that will divert your mind away from the thought of food. Think of his teachings, think of his love, think of his kindness. And in some way or other, keep your mind away from the thought of food. Keep your mind away from seeking comfort in food. I mean, I think you say it here. I can see there's a connection with anxiety in eating. Yes, often people eat because it helps to soothe anxiety. Nothing will alleviate our anxiety as effectively. I mean, nothing external will alleviate our anxiety as effectively as thinking about Bhagavan's teachings. What is there to be anxious about? His grace is taking care of everything. What is the worst thing that can happen? The body can die. Even if the body dies, he has started us on this path. He will continue leading us along this path. So many bodies have come and gone. We've gone, and I mean, our life in this body is just a dream. We've undergone innumerable dreams like this. So even death is not a big deal. There's nothing actually to be anxious about. We are anxious because we give reality to all these things. But Bhagavan has taught us what is actually real is only I am. And that is one thing that we can never lose. We're always aware I am. So his teachings can support us in so many ways to overcome the anxiety that prompts us to overeat. And so the main thing is not to allow your mind, when you find your mind is going towards food, divert it away. Best thing is to hold on to self-attentiveness. That's the best of all. Even when you feel you don't have sufficient love to cling to self-attentiveness, at least be thinking about Bhagavan, about his teachings, dwelling on his teachings, which will be reminding you of the transitory nature of all these things. All the things that are causing us anxiety, they all have come, they will go. Nothing lasts. So the causes of anxiety are transient. The causes are the seeming pleasure we get from eating is transient. It all passes. Nothing is lasting. Nothing is real. What is the only thing that is enduring, the only thing that is unchanging, the only thing that is self-shining is I am. So that alone is what is real. And that what is shining in our heart as I am, that is Bhagavan. That is the real nature of Bhagavan. And it is our real nature. So let's take more and more interest in knowing and being what we actually are, namely just I am, and try our best to turn within. And when our attention is coming outwards, try to keep the mind dwelling on Bhagavan's teachings, and on Bhagavan himself, and on the beautiful prayers he's composed for us in Arunachal Stuti Panchakam. All these things will help us to divert our mind away from the anxieties that prompt us to overeat, and the thought of the food that will also prompt us to overeat. So, from what you write in your email, you are going in the right direction. But we just try your best, not just to control the behavior of overeating. Try to control or try to curb the inclination, or rather try to avoid being swayed by the inclination that prompts you to overeat. Try to avoid the inclination to even think about eating. overeating it's only a seeming solution. It's not really a solution. We may seem to get comfort from it, but how long does that comfort last? It goes, and then we want to eat more, and then we want to eat more. It's endless. So we can't find real comfort in food. Relief from anxiety can be found only in our own heart. The one place, the one refuge, the only real refuge in this world is to turn within and sink into our heart. Our heart alone is the refuge, and that is Bhagavan. Bhagavan is shining in our heart as our heart. So he is our refuge. It's by turning within that we will find refuge from anxiety, desires, all these things. We can escape the power of the vasanas that are constantly pulling our mind outwards. We can escape from them only by taking refuge in our heart. Bhagavan has expressed it so beautifully in Arunachal Stuti Panchakam. For example, he says, just read, if you just consider the verses from verse 7 onwards. In verse 7, Bhagavan says, may you sit down or be firmly seated on my mind so that it does not run out deceiving or cheating on you. The mind running out cheating on him means if we are faithful to him, our mind will be constantly facing inwards. When it goes outwards, seeking happiness in this or that, we are cheating him. It's like that is Bhagavan wrote this Akshamlaya in the bridal barber. So the implication here is that Arunachal is our husband. We are the wife, and if we allow our mind to go outwards, we're like a promiscuous wife cheating on him. So he should sit firmly on us, on our mind, so that it does not run outwards, deceiving him or cheating him. And then in the next verse he says, so that seeing you uninterruptedly, the mind which roams about the world will subside, show your beauty. That is, why is our mind constantly going outwards, going towards this Vishaya or that Vishaya? It is because we have failed to recognize the beauty that is shining in our own heart, the beauty of Bhagavan, that is always shining in our heart as I am. So only the more we turn within, the more we will taste the real beauty of just being, and so we'll have less and less inclination to go outwards. So that is a beautiful verse. Ursutralam, that is the mind which roams about the world. That means the attention constantly going outwards, grazing here and there. Murgana, I think in this context, refers to the analogy Bhagavan used to give of the stray cow, but goes away from its shed and grazing here and there. So the mind is constantly going outward, seeking happiness here and there. But the real happiness, the real beauty, doesn't lie in the external world. It lies only in our own heart. And then in the next verse, in verse 9, he says, again, this is bridal barber. This is very beautiful. The literal meaning of verse 9 is, Arunachala, if you do not unite with me, destroying me is this manliness. That is, the implication here is, that is this, the bridal barber. That is, once the man has taken the earlier verses, Bhagavan talked about you entered my home or you entered my heart and took me out and kept me a prisoner in the cave of your heart. So the man has already, that is the beloved Lord has already attracted the girl and taken her out of her home and brought him to his own home. Now what he has to do, he has to consummate simply eloping but then leaving her to her own devices is of no good use. He now has to unite with the girl, destroying me. There's an illusion here, as Murgana points out. It's an illusion to destroying me implies destroying my virginity. But virginity is ego. So by eradicating ego, destroying me means destroying ego. That means that is ego here is or the virginity is analogous to ego, and the union is the union of husband and wife is analogous to the merging of ego in its source. So if you do not now unite with me, destroying me, that is, by this union, we are thereby destroyed. Just like a girl's virginity is lost by the union with her husband, when we unite with him, that is our ego is thereby destroyed. If having taken us out of our own home, having entered our heart, and having entered our minds and taken us out and pulled us within, if he doesn't now finish the job that he has started, is this manliness? Is this appropriate to you? He means, and then in verse 10, he's chiding Arunachala here. This is what is called nindastuti. He's Einindohorukum. Why this sleep? Ene pira irka. When others are pulling me, when others are dragging me outwards, the others here means the Vishaya Vasanas. When the Vishaya Vasanas are dragging us outwards, why are you sleeping? Einindohorukum. Why this sleep? Iduvana karaho. Is this beauty for you? Does this befit you? Is this becoming to you? If you pretend to sleep, obviously Arunachala is never sleeping. He's the one who is ever awake as I am in our heart. But if he remains indifferent when these vasanas are pulling us outwards, is it appropriate? Is it befitting him to pretend to sleep? Because obviously he's not sleeping. He can never sleep. He's the ever awake one. So he knows what is happening. If he allows us to be dragged outwards, if a man is allowing thieves to enter his house and take away his wife, what sort of is it befitting him? He shouldn't be pretending to sleep. He's there to protect her. And then in the next verse 11, he says, Aimbula kalva. The 5 sense thieves, that is again, the 5 sense thieves means our Vishaya Vasanas, our inclinations to go out and seek pleasures in the objects in sense objects. Aimbula kalba, the 5 sense thieves, that's the 5 kinds of sense objects that we seek pleasure in. When the Aimbula kalba, the Aim means 5, Pula means senses, kalva means thieves. So the thieves in the form of the 5 it refers to the inclination to seek pleasure in the senses. Overeating that is one of the aimbalu kalva. You're seeking in the taste, in the satisfaction of feeling that you've eaten. You're seeking pleasure in that. So when these 5 sense thieves ahatilni pohumbo, when they enter my heart, ahatilni ileo Arunachala, are you not in my heart? So how can you allow this to happen? When these thieves have entered my heart, entered my home, and you are there to protect me. You should prevent them from entering my heart and stealing me, taking my attention away from you. My attention belongs to you. You have every right over me, so you shouldn't allow my attention to be taken away from you by these sense thieves, is the implication. And then in the next verse, beautifully, he says, Oruvana munne, you who are the only one, is the implication. Oruvan means the one, but it implies the only one. Oruvana munne oliteba varuva. That literally means Arunachala hiding you, who are the one, who can come. Hiding you here implies hiding from you. So when he is the one that actually exists, who else can come in and it can enter our heart and steal our attention away? And so he concludes this verse saying, Unsu deidu, this is only your trick. So if these 5 sense thieves come into our heart, he's the only one. He's always present. He's never sleeping. So if they enter our heart and take our attention away from him, it's all his trick. And then in the next verse he says, he then praises Arunachala. Onkara porul oppoya villoi unayar arivar Arunachala. The Arunachala, the meaning or import of Om, of Omkara, that of the syllable, sacred syllable Om, you who are without equal, nothing is equal to or similar to you, or anything superior, who can know you? That only Arunachala can know himself. So if we want to know him, he must absorb us into himself. He must make us one with himself. Then only we can know him. And then in the next verse he says, Au veipolenakun arulei tandani alu vadungaran Arunachala. Arunachala, giving me your grace like a mother, taking charge of me is your duty. That is aluvadu. It's such a beautiful word in Tamil. It means taking full control of us, taking charge of us. Like a loving adult may take charge of an orphan child. Taking charge means taking full responsibility, taking control, but also taking responsibility for the care and the welfare of. So it's his duty to take charge of us, not to allow us to be stolen away by these 5 sense thieves. So all these, if you read Akshamlai, you will find so many prayers that are so fitting to our condition, because Bhagavan knew exactly the struggles we're all going through. And he has given, these verses are so appropriate for anyone who is following the spiritual path, trying to turn within and seeing our own weakness, how we're constantly going outwards. We can only pray to him, and he alone can support us and help us. And he's always willing to do so, but we must be willing to give ourselves to him. He's willing to take charge, complete charge of us, take complete control of us at any time, but we must be willing to hand over control. So long as we are using our mind, speech and body for fulfillment of our desires, he's not going to interfere. We must say, Bhagavan, not my will, your will. Ninishtam enishtam, as he says in 2nd verse of Arunachala Patikam. Your will is my will. Imbedaku, that is happiness for me. So we should be willing to give ourselves wholly to him, to surrender to him. Then he will take complete charge of us. So the struggle you're going through is the struggle all spiritual aspirants are going through in one form or other. In your case, there's an inclination to overeat. But it's only by his grace that we can gain that love, that liking to turn back within and know ourselves as we actually are. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya.